Let me guess. You came into this one thinking it was some mall punk fashion show. Wrong. Well, well, look who's wandered into the mosh pit of actual punk knowledge. Loud, fast, snotty, and gloriously non-compliant. I'm Melvin, your superior cerebral overlord, here to test whether you're a true punk historian, or just another poser in a patched-up denim vest. No Green Day safety net here, my spike-haired friend. This quiz dives straight into the snarling core of real punk rock. So strap in, crank the feedback, and prove your brain can thrash as hard as your record collection. 3 levels, getting harder as we go. Or maybe not. Depends on how well you know your punk history. So lace up those battered boots, crank the distortion, and prepare to prove your brain can take a proper beating from the gods of punk rock. 1, 2, 3, go! Level 1. Basic Punk 101. Relax, rookie. These are the kind of questions even your mum's Clash t-shirt could answer. Who founded the band Misfits in 1977 in Lodi, New Jersey? Glenn Danzig. The Ramones single I Want to Be Your Boyfriend was released in what year? (1976). What is the 1977 debut album by The Damned? Damned, Damned, Damned. Who replaced Glenn Matlock as the Sex Pistols bassist in 1977? Sid Vicious. Who had a 1988 single titled Punk Rock Girl? The Dead Milkmen. Which double album by The Clash, produced by Guy Stevens, was released in December 1979? London Calling. Johnny Blitz, Cheetah Chrome and Stiv Bators were founding members of which band? Dead Boys. Fresh Fruit for Rotting Vegetables was the 1980 debut album for which band? Dead Kennedys. Fronted by Darby Crash, what early LA punk band became known for chaotic performances and the 1979 album G.I.? Germs. Who was the singer of Toronto, Canada's The Vile Tones? Stephen Leckie. Which band did Mike Ness put together in 1978? Social Distortion. Nice! That brain of yours just stage-dived straight into accuracy. Which Philadelphia band released Shorter, Faster, Louder in 2000? Kid Dynamite. Subhumans is a band name used by 2 different bands, one in Canada, one in the UK. Which was formed first? The Canadian band, by 2 years. Which Australian band's 1976 single, I'm Stranded, is considered the first major punk release outside the US and UK? The Saints. Which London band fronted by Polly Styrene released the 1978 album Germ-Free Adolescence? X-Ray Specs. Which 1973 album by the Stooges, mixed by David Bowie, became a proto-punk landmark? Raw Power. Dottie Danger is an alias for which popular 80s artist, while she was a transitional drummer in The Germs? Belinda Carlisle. What 1976 single by The Damned is widely recognised as the first UK punk single, issued on Stiff Records? New Rose. Which Irish punk band formed in Belfast in 1977 released Inflammable Material in 1979? Stiff Little Fingers. What band formed in Edinburgh, Scotland in 1978 released their first studio album in 1980 titled Punk's Not Dead? The Exploited. What 1976 debut album by the Ramones, released on Sire Records, defined the high-speed minimalist punk template? Ramones. Kathleen Hanna is a founding member and vocalist in which Olympia, Washington band? The Keene Kill. What 1977 single by the Sex Pistols was banned by the BBC for its anti-monarch lyrics? God Save the Queen. Which London, UK band's 1979 debut album was titled The Crack? The Ruts. Formed in 1975, Teenage Head is from which country? Canada. Level 2, Hardcore Checkpoint. Hope you stretch that brain, because things are about to hit harder than a bad brain's breakdown. What Canadian band released the 1979 album Talks Cheap? The Demics. Another Music in a Different Kitchen was the debut studio album for which British band? Buzzcocks. What Swedish band released the album War Music in 2019? Refused. D. Boon, Mike Watt and George Hurley formed which band in 1980? Minutemen. Charlie Harper is the founder and mainstay vocalist for which English band formed in 1976? UK Subs. Corporate Whores was a 1996 album for which Canadian band? Dayglow Abortions. Guitarist Greg Hetson and which former Black Flag vocalist formed Circle Jerks? Keith Morris. Never Gonna Die is a 2018 album by which California band? Pennywise. Also known as the Yellow Tape, which band's self-titled 1982 debut studio album came out on a cassette-only label? Bad Brains. Anthony Civarelli is a founding member and vocalist for which New York band? Gorilla Biscuits. What 1977 single by The Adverts, later included on their 1978 album, became one of punk's most infamous hits? Gary Gilmore's Eyes. Formed in 1975, which English band's debut album was titled Tell Us the Truth? Sham 69. Reject All American is a 1996 album by which band? Bikini Kill. Which Dutch anarcho-punk group, formed 1979, released Disturbing Domestic Peace in 1980? The X. Minor Threat's Ian Mackay is co-founder and owner of what record label? Discord Records. What 1983 single by Crass condemned the Falklands War and directly criticized Margaret Thatcher? How Does It Feel to Be the Mother of 1,000 Dead? Which band, whose name is taken from a series of nuclear tests done in 1952, released 3 studio albums, starting with the Hectic EP in 1988? Operation Ivy. Which Finnish punk band released I Really Hate Ya with the B-side I Want You Back in 1977? Briard. What independent label, founded in 1979 by Jello Biafra and East Bay Ray, issued all of Dead Kennedy's early records? Alternative Tentacles. Dead Kennedys were formed in which US city? San Francisco. Who was the founding singer for Black Flag? Keith Morris. Which California power trio released the 7-inch EP titled Bloodstains in 1980? Agent Orange. Name the Swedish band that released the album For Monkeys in 1997. Millencolin. Which band released the album Fear of a Punk Planet in 1990? The Vandals. Which band was Henry Rollins in before joining Black Flag? State of Alert, SOA. Level 3, Anarchy Expert Mode. This is it, deep-cut chaos. Only the filthy, the fearless, and the factually correct make it out alive. Mark Adkins is the founding and current vocalist for which Huntington Beach band? Guttermouth. What is the title of Bad Religion's first studio album? How Could Hell Be Any Worse? Their third album out of 8, which English band released Scum in 1997? Anti-Nowhere League. 1997 album Unmerry Melodies was the studio debut for which New Jersey band? Bigwig. James Newell Osterberg is the birth name for which punk rock icon? Iggy Pop. Formed in Richmond, Virginia in 1999, what band had their music featured in 3 Tony Hawk video games in the 2000s? Strike Anywhere. What Fullerton, California band released the album Brats in Battalions in 1987? Adolescents. Which Suffolk, England band were known for their Clockwork Orange Drooge look and released Songs of Praise in 1981? The Addicts. Who released their 8th album titled The People or the Gun in 2009? Anti-Flag. TSOL is a band formed in California in 1978. What do the letters in their names stand for? True Sounds of Liberty. Dave King, vocalist for Flogging Molly, was also the singer in what hard rock band in the 1980s? Fastway. Which LA band released the album The 90s Suck and So Do You in 1999. Angry Samoans. Who released the album Let's Wreck the Party in 1985? DOA. What Japanese punk band's 1981 album Trash helped launch Japan's hardcore movement? The Stalin. Released in 1995, Lockjaw was the second album for which California band? Dancehall Crashers. Two members of MC5 both died of the same thing years apart at the age of 46. What did they pass away from? Heart attacks. Formed at New York University in 1986 as Rise, which band later released the album Unfun in 1990? Jawbreaker. Ian Knox Carnacan co-founded which band in 1977 that released 25 albums up to 2022? The Vibrators. Which band's debut album Pezcore was released in 1995? Less Than Jake. Congratulations, you've officially gone corporate. Formed as Kleenex in 1978 and changing their name to Lilliput in 1979. This band is from where? Switzerland. 1982 studio album Milo Goes to College was the debut record for who? Descendants. Which Vancouver band released the 7-inch Death to the Sickoids in 1978? Subhumans. Which band's only studio album was No Gods, No Managers, released in 1999? Choking Victim. What New York City band's debut album is The Age of Quarrel, released in 1986? Cro-Mags. Shane MacGowan, Spider Stacy and Jem Finer formed which band in London, England in 1982? The Pogues. Well, that was beautifully chaotic. Some of you blasted through like a rusty runaway tour van, and the rest, well, you're about as punk as a scented candle. Or maybe you just took too many elbows to the face. But hey, at least you tried, right? Smash that like button before it smashes you back. Subscribe for more cerebral chaos. And I'll see you next time in the Brainiac's Trivia Vortex. Now go, and remember, question everything, especially authority. Melvin, out! Seriously, just click something before I start playing a kazoo version of Bohemian Rhapsody.